Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar on how to grow your green career. I'm Julia from SustainIt and we are delighted to be hosting today's session. For those who are not familiar with SustainIt, we are an independent sustainability and EHS data consultancy. We help global organizations dramatically improve the quality of their non-financial data. So do get in touch if you need some help or advice. Now, on to the webinar. I'm really pleased to introduce today's presenter, Rhian, founder of Women in Sustainability. Thank you so much for joining us today, Rhian.
Thank you, Julia. And hello, everybody, and welcome to our first webinar looking at how to grow your green career. We are Women in Sustainability, the professional network that helps women thrive in careers that are building a healthier, happier and greener world. And we do this through organising our networking hubs, our speaker events and our coaching programs, all with the aim of fostering collaboration and personal and professional development. And I am so delighted to see so many of you join us here for this webinar. We've had over 600 people actually register on Eventbrite, and we've got over almost 145 people joining us live today. And I know a lot of people will be listening to the recording later. So you're all really, really welcome. And so that we can all get a sense of who's here, who's online, do feel free to now pop your name and where you're dialing in from in the chat box below. It'd be lovely to see who's actually live, and I can say hello to some of you. So whilst we're waiting for more people to join the call, and I'll give a few little call outs, I just want to set the context for this webinar. Last November, Women in Sustainability held a networking hub in London with our London network, exploring the options and tactics for navigating a purpose-led and fulfilling career. We had incredible response to that webinar, and to that session. And so what we decided to do was to team up with SustainIt to take this discussion online. So to help us explore this topic, I'm absolutely delighted to have three very experienced women in sustainability join us as our speakers today. And before I introduce you to them, I just want to get a sense of who we've actually got online. And I'm going to do a quick little poll. So tell us where you currently are in your green career. So if you could just select one of the following and just click where you are. So are you starting out? Are you getting somewhere? So you might be 3 to 5 years into your role and so on. Are you comfortably achieving? Do you see yourself as a seasoned professional? Or maybe you're a sole trader, a freelancer or a business owner. So I'm just going to keep that poll up for a moment and just give you a chance to quickly click on there and let us know who's online and where you are. We've had quite a lot of you vote. I will close the poll very soon. Almost all of you have voted. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. I'm going to close the poll now. Okay, so what we've got is about 42% of you are just starting out. You're just 2 years into the role. Then we've got 16% of you are sole traders, freelancers, business owners. And then we have actually got a split really in terms of 15% are sort of 3 to 5 years into your role, 14% are sort of over 10 years, your seasoned professionals, and about 12% comfortably achieving. Well, thank you very much for sharing that with me. And I just want to also get a different poll now, just to get us thinking about how you're feeling about your career. So this poll is about how you're feeling about it, because what this webinar is all about is getting you to spend an hour of your time just to reflect on where you're going and to get you thinking about your options and your tactics. So I thought it'd be quite nice to get a sense for myself and for our speakers before we get going, as to how you're currently feeling about your green career. And this is getting you to think about your vision, about how clear are you about where you want to go, and whether or not you've got some idea, but you haven't really got a sense of how to get there, and so on. So that's the poll I've got up at the moment. And I can see as we're clicking through that leading the way is I have only some idea of where I'd like to go and how. That is clearly in the lead with this poll. So I'm just going to close that in a moment. Just give you another second. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now. Yeah, so over half of you are in that B category, that you have only some idea of where you want to go and how. Underneath that, there are about 24% of you that you've got no vision or ideas, but you're just following the opportunities that's coming up. And we've got 1% who said none of the above. Okay, thank you very much for sharing that. I'm just going to quickly go into chat and see if anybody shared their names there. I can't see anything in there. That's rather that's curious. Don't know who has actually said hello, but yeah, we'll leave it up, and if I can see anybody coming through as we go on and saying hello, I will call you out. Okay, let's get into our topic then. Let's get into meeting our speakers. So first up, I'm absolutely delighted to introduce you to Maureen Bray of Schneider Electric. Maureen works in the business development of international clients, helping define, plan and implement sustainability strategies. Maureen has had a variety of roles within Schneider Electric, including heading up the sustainability consultancy team, as well as with the European Carbon and Climate Change Compliance team. Prior to working with Schneider Electric, Maureen worked in environmental management, in marketing, and commenced her career in the study of geosciences. Maureen has explored a few pathways within environmental sustainability and feels that her journey has been largely influenced by taking chances and stepping up to the challenges faced. Hello and welcome, Maureen.
Hello, thank you.
Oops. Over to you, Maureen, if you'd just like to share your thoughts on how do we grow our green career.
Sure, and thank you, Rhian, and hello everyone, and thanks for joining. Although I've had a very lovely introduction there, I suppose I'll just kind of reiterate a little bit about myself and the role that I have. In particular, what I'd like to do is share with you my unique pathway to my current sustainability career, talking through the journey that I've taken that definitely has shaped where I am today. What I'd like to do is call on a couple of points. Towards the end, what I'd like to do is really highlight some of the key challenges that I've faced throughout that journey, that I definitely think has helped define the pathway that I've taken. And what I'd also like to do is summarize some of the important lessons and key beliefs that I've formed on reflection of that journey so far. So just to give you a bit of an introduction and to show you where I started. So as Rhian mentioned, I started in the study of environmental geosciences. And so when I started out in Canada, prior to moving to the UK to live with my husband, I was working as a geologist. I was working for an energy company, investigating gas wells, and also scoping out potential for renewable energy developments. So after moving to the UK, I couldn't find a similar role in geosciences. I was very much restricted in terms of years of experience and the location that I was based. So eventually what I decided to do was I gave in and I accepted a temporary role at a construction fit-out company. I worked primarily on bids and tenders. And so although it wasn't what I wanted to do, I needed a job. So whilst I was working on these tenders and they were coming in, I was very much noticing a pattern, a recurring theme. A lot of our prospective clients wanted their suppliers to have environmental certifications. So this included the likes of ISO 14001 environmental management systems. So what I did was I made a business case. I brought that forward to the directors, and I suggested that they go down the route of getting ISO 14001 and establishing a role for an environmental manager within the business. So eventually I was successful in convincing them to create this role, but they hired someone else. So the person they hired was an external applicant, and the first task really was, to get ISO 14001 implemented. So although I was largely disappointed, I continued on with my role of bid management. And eventually I was contacted about 3 months prior to the certification audit and was asked if I would step into the role to create the environmental management system and to prepare for the certification date. So I put everything into it. I went on to an ISO 14001 lead auditor's course and successfully achieved the certification for the business. This was a very exciting time in particular. I believe that it was my opportunity, although initially declined to take the role. You know, I was able to step up to that mark and to really demonstrate my ability within that field. So I eventually then experienced a new challenge, which was great. But I then started to experience additional negative challenges. So I then had a very challenging relationship with a boss. It was an unpleasant experience in which I started dreading going into my work, and I decided that I really had to move on from that company. So what I did was I found a posting for an energy engineering role within an energy company. Although I didn't meet the desired requirements, I applied anyway for the role and was hired for my compliance experience with ISO 14001 and due to my interpersonal skills. So although I felt that I was out of my comfort zone, I really decided to step up and to take the challenge and make the move. So then with this new business, within this new company, there were many organizational changes occurring. So it was another new experience for me, whereby a larger organization, many things going on, changes occurring, and they were going through a lot of periods of acquisitions. So what that meant for me is that my roles changed very frequently, and I very quickly moved through various roles with different focuses on energy and climate change and carbon compliance, and eventually broadening into sustainability consultancy. So during this time, I managed a couple of different teams of analysts and consultants, mostly focusing on sustainability compliance and consultancy. And I really learned the challenges of managing people and discovering a lot about my own weaknesses, and also identifying my strengths. And within these various roles, I was often asked to step up and to take on challenging tasks, which were either outside of my comfort zone or out of my realms of specialism. Very often there were lack of resources or lack of support which were available, or they may have been risky moves or unexplored ventures. But what I did notice was that I learned that it's important to step up and to accept these challenges, to really take those opportunities to show your worth, work hard and demonstrate capabilities. And really this can't happen without the courage and confidence to take these tasks on and to really demonstrate your abilities. Very often what I would do is I would look back on the last few months, and I would think about how long has it been since I've stepped out of my comfort zone and I've really pushed myself. And I really tried to make sure that at least 1 or 2 big challenges a year were taken on, where I'm keeping myself on my toes and really making sure that I'm challenging myself. So very soon after, I then came across another challenge. At that point, I felt that I had reached a point in my career where the room to progress upwards in terms of available positions and likelihood to be promoted amongst peers was very slim. And I knew there wasn't going to be any progression for some time unless there were some major changes to be made. And I needed really to fulfill that desire to continue to challenge and to step out of my comfort zone. And I also thought that it was maybe time to grow another skill and to explore another area of opportunity. So this is where I took what I would think is my biggest leap. And so this was moving into a sales-focused role. So what I decided to do really was I gave up on people management. I handed in a director's title. And I really essentially exchanged my seniority in my current pathway to take a sidestep into a consultancy sales role. I had never worked in a sales capacity ever, and I wasn't sure how this was going to go. And I also knew that I lacked certain skills for the role. What I did learn within a year of being in such a role was that I could do it, that I was pretty good at it. And in added to that, I developed new skills. So in particular, I stepped out of my comfort zone. I was building new contacts, and most importantly, I opened another pathway or another door to further potential. Most of all, with all of it, I felt that I was much happier in my role. I found a new career that I enjoyed and that I felt passionate about. And to expand to that, there's the potential to expand even further horizons within the field of sustainability. So really, I suppose the summary of all of these challenges and all of these, individual items that I've faced, whether, they were of opportunity or whether they were times of real challenge and frustration, I felt that the requirement to taking on small tasks, taking on the opportunities to speak at conferences or webinars or any other function, taking on projects, both professionally and personally, I was making sure that I was constantly pushing myself. So I think that's a really important item. I think it's an important action for all of us, is to make sure that we're constantly challenging ourselves and pushing ourselves beyond our comfort zone. Another note, which I think about and I think helps shape where I've come from and also where I believe I'm going, is I took chances. It's not always priority to either make more money or have a better title or move up within the current pathway that you're in, but sometimes it's about prioritizing lifestyle and prioritizing development opportunities over what appears to be progression in its general form. So I think this all kind of leads in nicely into the fact that, within the realms of women in sustainability, when we talk about sustainability, it has many facets, many manifestations. And I think what's most important about that, and my key message really, is to always expand your knowledge and understanding of new areas and focus. So we see, the term of sustainability applying to businesses within finance, quality, risk, health and safety, product development, and beyond. So I think keeping your horizons open, keeping those doors open, and always being willing to take chances and be confident in making those decisions. So really, that's it from me, Rhian.
Thank you, Maureen. That was fantastic. Really refreshing, as always, to hear you talk about the importance of embracing new challenges and how you've just stepped into things knowing that you didn't know everything. So folks, this is your opportunity to ask a question. If you'd like to go into the question box, that's the live box for asking your questions. If you just want to tap in a question for Maureen, we've probably got time to answer one or two. To just have a little think, is there anything you would like to know a little bit more about? Those things we can't answer here, we will try and answer offline again. So do tap in any questions you may have. I'll give you a moment. And if we don't have any questions, we'll come back to you, Maureen, because there might be one a bit further on as people get going. There's always a bit of a delay with these things, I find. People tap in the question box and then we don't get to see it a little bit later. Julia, can you see any questions for Maureen?
Yes, I can see a question, and it's a question from Sophie, and thank you, Sophie, for joining us today. And she says she's looking to start her career in sustainability consulting and or CSR. Would you suggest studying a master's to get into the sustainability industry?
I think that's an interesting question, and it's one that I probably thought about for a very long time, especially within the field of work that I came from, where I studied originally. All of my friends were getting masters, many of which went on to do PhDs afterwards. So for me, it was a personal ambition that I thought, was something that maybe I really should have done, or that I really wanted to do. But what I did find, and others may have completely different opinions, I find that there's nothing that can beat work experience. So being able to roll up your sleeves and demonstrate to employers your ability, it really, I think the challenge is getting in and being able to demonstrate your capabilities. Whether you have an undergrad degree, a master's degree, or a PhD, I don't necessarily think it matters. I think it's all about how you demonstrate your capabilities in the job. And there's so much that you end up learning in the role that you're in through interactions with customers and clients and colleagues.
Thanks, Maureen. I'm conscious of the time, so we are going to move on to Katie, but we may come back to you depending on the time at the end to see if we've got some more questions, because I know there will be some more. But thank you so much. So our next panelist, but before I introduce her, I just want to acknowledge how many people we've got on the call here. We've got some fantastic people calling in from Italy, Oregon, Texas, Portugal. Hello, Isabel. We've got Haley in Stuttgart. We've got people in Bristol, Manchester, London, Colchester, Arizona, Amsterdam, Texas. Hello, Julia. So loads of you all joining the call. So thank you so much for being here today. So with that little brief acknowledgement, let's move on to our second panelist, Katie Piera. Katie manages the sustainability recruitment team at Allen & York. She oversees mandates for senior appointments through to mid-level hire for both corporate and consultancy clients. She is a highly experienced recruiter, having specialized in this field for over 10 years, and is also passionate about environmental issues and working with professionals from across the sustainability sector. Her team works collaboratively with a range of organisations, often on a retained or exclusive basis, taking time to fully understand businesses and enabling them to source the highest calibre of candidates to drive their sustainability agendas forward. Katie holds a BSc in Geography and an MSc in Coastal Zone Management. Hello, Katie, and welcome.
Hello.
Over to you to tell us your tips on how to grow your green career.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk. Yeah, so as you sort of mentioned, I'm an environmental graduate. I've always worked within Allen & York, and we are a specialist environmental and sustainability recruiter. We're actually celebrating our 25th anniversary this year, so I think it's a really fantastic achievement for us, and we're very proud of. And as Rhian mentioned, within the sustainability team I lead, we work with a huge range of clients, both in the UK and overseas. It means we have a really extensive network of candidates and clients as well. Sometimes I work with one-man bands right up to big multinational global organisations. It gives us a really strong position in the market and makes my role really interesting and different every day. So today, obviously, I want to talk to you about how to build a green career, and it's a really broad, subject, and there is no one-fits-all answer. Hopefully, I can sort of share some of my experiences with you, and it will help you to focus on your career development. So I spend hours talking to candidates each day, tracking their history, learning more about themselves and what they want to do. And what does become clear is often people don't have a plan. So that's really kind of what I'm here to talk about today. Is my first point is you need a plan. You need to look at the skills you have, look at the skills you're lacking, and then sort of look at what the stepping stones are to get you where you need to go. I'd certainly say don't underestimate the value of your softer skills as well. I think us as women, we have excellent listening skills. We're often more empathetic, more collaborative sometimes. And certainly, I find that company culture is becoming increasingly important these days. Certainly from a candidate perspective, they want to find the right company to join. And indeed, the companies themselves want to find the right people to join their business and help to drive that forward. So you can really be an ambassador for these skills. It's going to put you in a very strong position. There have also been claims, I did some research obviously in preparation for this, that said that having women on the board of directors can improve productivity and bottom line. Obviously it's not really proven as such, but it's certainly an interesting concept and something to think about. In relation to the skills that you lack, think about what they are and what you can do to gain them. So, similar to what Maureen said, if it's environmental management systems, for example, that you want to get into, see if you can tag on to a couple of projects to get some exposure, and see if you can do any sort of education, self-education, whether that be background reading on the subject, or indeed taking specific qualifications. As Maureen mentioned, she did the ISO 14001 accreditation. On the subject of qualifications, think about what you need and when you plan to achieve them. So again, one of the questions was, do I need a specialist master's course? I mean, if your undergraduate degree is not in an environmental discipline and you want to be in sustainability, then I think it could well be a good idea to have a specialist master's. Chartership is something that at various different stages in your career people might want to do, and joining professional bodies as well. IEMA is the one that tends to pop up on job descriptions I see. But obviously with us as being women in sustainability, then the ICRS, the Institute for Corporate Responsibility and Sustainability, is becoming increasingly important and popular and certainly relevant. So once you do have a plan, don't forget about it. It's very easy to do, but you need to kind of try and stick to that plan as much as you can. And don't be afraid to be open about that plan as well. It is a case of you don't ask, you don't get. It can be daunting, speaking to your manager and telling them what you want to do, ideally. But most of the time you'll find they're probably very helpful and very open to listening to your suggestions, and they may well help with your development through either different courses or qualifications that they can pay for, and that you can do, as part of your normal job. Again, similar to what Maureen said earlier, don't let anyone tell you can't do it. Be confident. I read an article in The Guardian a while ago which talks about how women lack confidence, from sort of school age and upwards. Again, this, it's not been sort of proven as such, but I think we do need to be really confident and put ourselves forward for certain positions. I think sometimes, women can have perhaps a mid-career crisis of confidence, maybe coming back from maternity leave. And the only thing I'd suggest there is obviously use those keeping in touch days to your advantage. Make sure you're up to speed with what the company's doing, what's going on in your team, so that when you come back it doesn't feel quite so daunting. So that kind of really wraps up the plan phase, and now it's kind of looking at how to execute it, and there are a number of different ways to do this. So the first one is your network. I used to hate the phrase networking, but it is really important. Attend conferences, attend summits. I tend to go to about 3 or 4 a year, and I think that helps me find and get a really good sense of what's going on in the market and what the new trends are. So target people and companies. If there's a company that's doing what you want to do, and that's the kind of company you want to work for, try and target them and set up some meetings, see if you can talk to them at the conferences, find out what they're talking about. It's amazing the little snippets of information you can pick up from these sorts of events. Secondly, keep your continuous professional development running in parallel with your role. It is hard to do, obviously, work's very busy and personal lives are very busy as well. But attend any kind of IEMA updates, talks, webinars such as this are really useful. It will give you the confidence when talking to key decision makers, if you have some really important knowledge behind you. As I mentioned earlier, additional qualifications and courses, they really add to your market value. I saw on LinkedIn a while ago, a chap was congratulating a lady for achieving her chartered environmental status. And he talked about the fact, it's a globally recognised standard for people who are leading change within their sector. Something I'll mention later on is really talking about your achievements and making sure that people know what you're doing. So being very visible on LinkedIn and Twitter and other platforms. Professional subscriptions, it's a really easy way to, without taking too much time out of your day, to keep up to date with trends, industry trends. A lot of companies will offer them, as part of a package. So if you're moving into a new position, do ask if that's an option. Or even in your existing company, if they don't want to do individual subscriptions, they could do a company-wide subscription. And you can obviously use that just to kind of keep up to speed with what's going on and what the new trends are, and get some new names of people that you want to connect with. Professional memberships, make sure they'll add value. They are really useful, as I've mentioned already, IEMA, ICRS. And I think interview practice is something that's underestimated sometimes. the preparation that's involved is so important, and I think sometimes people don't realise how much prep is involved in putting together a good interview, be that just the first competence-based interview or a second interview with a presentation or an exercise to complete. You know, I had a candidate that said they had to go to at least 4 interviews before they felt comfortable attending an interview again and being able to get through a competency-based interview. So they are a good way of kind of getting you out into the market, seeing what's out there, putting yourself forward for opportunities. But, you know, do put the time in to prepare for those properly. And when you've had the interview, you know, do ask for feedback. It's really invaluable. You know, clients will be quite honest with you and they'll give you some good positive and constructive criticism, and that will really help you when attending the next interview. In terms of your roles, you know when to move on. Try not to stagnate in your current role. But again, as Maureen said earlier, you know, be prepared to maybe take a sideward step in order to position yourself within the right organisation that can really help you drive your career forward and that fits with your plan. I mean, it, you know, completely depends on your own plan and the specific organisation you're working with. So I've got 2 directors, both females, that I work with. One of them's has worked within 3 organisations over her career to get to the level she wanted to get to. Another lady has actually managed to stay within the same organisation and work her way right up from entry level to director level. So you don't always need to move, you know, necessarily for the right progression. It really just depends what organisation you're in and what you're looking to do. I have another client who made a bit of a sort of tongue-in-cheek joke about, you know, people come in on their first day and as a consultant, and the next day they're asking when they're going to be CEO. You know, you've got to be prepared to put the graft in, put the work in, prove yourself. Don't try and move too quickly, but you know when you need to move. And that was my next point, really. Know when to step up and put yourself forward. So apply for new roles. You know, you never know what companies are looking for when you apply for roles, so you might not tick all of the boxes on the job description, but if you feel you've got some value to add to that organisation and it's the right organisation for you, then certainly put yourself forward. And if you can get to interview stage, you never know what's going to happen. If not now, then maybe in a couple of months' time. You know, and I think there was a Hewlett-Packard study which said that, you know, men apply for roles when they can do about 80% of the tasks, whereas women tend to wait till we can do all of it before we apply for roles. And again, I don't know how true that is, but I think, you know, as Maureen said earlier, you've got to really, you know, put yourself forward. You know, you won't be able to do everything in that role. That's partly the reason you're looking to move, is because you want to develop, you want to progress and learn new skills. In my experience, of course, employers are looking for strong skills and experience, but you don't have to know everything to be successful. To talk about opportunities with your employers, highlight your skills, your strengths, your ambitions as well. If you do put yourself forward, make sure your CV is fit for purpose. Something else that, you know, in addition to interviews that maybe can be a bit rushed sometimes, ensure that your strengths, experiences and achievements are on there, are highlighted and they're well presented. There are a number of templates online, you know, for you to look at. There isn't really a one-fits-all guide that we use. We don't really have a template here that we send to people. It does really depend on what you're looking for. You know, you can contact a specialist recruiter if you want some help and advice on your CV. I'd be more than happy to talk about that. Another way is in executing the plan is to raise your profile. So again, share information online, LinkedIn and Twitter. Sustainability is a great industry, but we do need to raise awareness and sort of share the insights for those unbelievers, I guess, and the people who are looking to influence and can see you. I actually had a client recently advise another senior candidate that, you know, she hadn't really put herself out there enough in terms of networking, and it's something that really is important, especially at a more senior level, to make sure that you're out and about and you're networking in the right places. If you can set up a professional Twitter account, I think that's really useful. It's going to add value to your personal profile, and offer your company a vehicle to enhance their sustainability profile as well. So, you know, if you're happy where you are, you can really help to boost that company's profile. You know, a couple of examples, Mike Barry from M&S and Claudine Blamey from the Crown Estate, they're very visible on social media, and they're hugely visible figures within sustainability. Any speaker slots you can get is going to add, again, to sort of growing your profile and putting you out there. They're a bit daunting from time to time, but they are really useful, and it does get your profile out to a wider audience. And as I said before, attending seminars and conferences. Really importantly, make sure it's sustainable for yourself. You know, I've mentioned a lot of different things there, and you can't do all of them by no means. You know, life is busy, so be quite selective and do the things that will benefit you at a certain point in your career. You can also delegate things to others, you know, such as a specialist recruiter. we can help keep you up to date with what's going on. We're talking to the key decision makers on a daily basis, so we like to think we have our finger on the pulse, and we can kind of perhaps advise you and guide you a little bit. And finally, I think it's just really important to know that you need to perhaps review that plan. Things change, life changes, personal circumstances, markets. You mentioned at the beginning of the poll that was first done, I think a lot of people are kind of on their way, but they're quite opportunity-led. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think that's, a lot of people find themselves in that position. You can't, as much as you have a plan, it's going to probably change at some point. So be flexible, but revisit that plan, revise it if necessary, and then try and stick to that new one. So to wrap things up, I'm finding an increasing number of women securing mid to senior level roles within the sustainability sector. It's really nice when I send the CVs through and they're all women that I send over and hardly any men. Especially male-dominated sectors sometimes, and finding a lot more women within the area. So we're in a really, really strong position. Work really hard to become an expert in your area, get yourself out there, be visible, be prepared to flex your plan, and believe in yourself. So that's kind of my main suggestions, really.
Thank you, Katie, for those fantastic tips. There's so much value that you've just given to everybody. So yes, your turn, folks. If you've got any questions for Katie, just tap it into the question box. We'll give you a few moments for you to do that. And whilst you do that, I'll just say hello to a few more of you. Hello, Heidi, over in El Salvador. We've got Anna and Haley in Amsterdam. Hello. Becky from Houston. Got Imogen and Talia in Oxford. Hello, you both. Sophie in Cornwall and Steph up in Manchester. So hello, everybody. Julia, we got a question for Katie.
Yes, we have got quite a few of them, but I'm afraid we won't be able to answer them all. We might do after the webinar though. But we have quite an interesting question from Amy, and she says, do you have any advice for testing the market and applying for jobs and having interviews in a small area where there is a significant chance your boss will find out?
Good question.
That's a difficult one. I mean, all you can do is to be as subtle and confidential as you can. All the sectors I work within, they're really small worlds, and it is something that people mention to me. They say, like, I know somebody there, and certainly I'll always tend to ask people as well, if you're working on are you working on projects with any of the companies that I might approach for you. If you're working with a recruiter, make sure that they contact you first so that you know where your CV is going. To make sure that it's not going off to somewhere that actually is going to put you in an awkward position. That's the last thing that we want to do is put you in an awkward position. If you're looking to move to a competitor or a company that's very closely related to yours, if you want to make that move, you're just going to have to be brave, I think, and be as discreet as possible. Maybe when you send a CV over, just put highly confidential. You can always send it to the hiring manager as opposed to somebody else. That's probably going to minimise the chances. Obviously, when the CV gets to the client itself, to the company, we haven't got any control, I'm afraid, as to what happens there. But I think be as discreet as you can. Make sure your market is confidential, and if you're working through a recruiter, make sure that they run every role by you so that your CV is not being sent to someone that you don't want it to go to.
Great. Thank you very much for that. I think we're going to have to move on to our next speaker, but I can see we've got quite a few questions. So we'll come up to them. There's some great ones here. It might even be the source of a blog article, actually. Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll move on to Kate Martin Branches, who's Director of Green Unlimited. Kate has over 18 years of experience in the field of sustainability, working with major UK and international companies in consultancy, as well as working in industry and for international charity. Kate has just recently started her own freelance sustainability consultancy, Green Unlimited, where she's now helping organisations to develop and implement sustainable business strategies that build long-term value and to communicate with stakeholders effectively. Kate has worked in the UK and internationally with a wide variety of organisations in the public, private and not-for-profit sectors, including those in utilities, customer goods, food and drink, oil and gas, leisure, hospitality and transport. pretty much all of them covered there then, Kate. She has previously worked at DMVGL, Deloitte, and has been seconded to the World Economic Forum, as well as working at EDF Energy and the International Business Leaders Forum. Hello, Kate.
Hi, Rhian.
Hello. Well, over to you then to share your tips on how to grow your green career.
Thanks very much, and hello, everybody. This is my story about growing my green career over the last 19 years. I initially chose the environmental field and was actually following in my parents' footsteps. They set up an environmental consultancy in the 1980s. And like them, I always had a passion for geography and the environment at school. It was, to be honest, what I was best at and also what I enjoyed the most. So I followed that passion to university, and I wanted to study something more modern and a bit more applied than pure geography. And so checking out all of the different options, I found that environmental science fitted the bill for me. During my course, I enjoyed the applied social science and economic side of the modules. And those areas are aligned with what has become into corporate responsibility or sustainability, although back then that wasn't actually a thing. It was an invented term. So during the latter part of my degree, I was considering the different career options that were available. This was in the late 1990s, and the environmental field included things like working for the government or United Nations, charities like Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth in the UK, or to go down a business route by working in consultancy or in industry. Relatively few roles existed back then in industry that were not compliance, environmental health and safety focused. But I made the career, so I guess the career defining decision then, that I wanted to work with companies from the inside to help make them change. And so I chose that business route. One of the questions earlier was about having a master's, and I don't have one. I think I'm relatively unusual. And in the recruitment that I've done for graduates and junior grades over the last 10 years, I do see that a master's is becoming pretty standard. I do realise it's a big financial commitment, and so I'd say to consider it carefully if you don't have a specific undergrad degree like I did. I certainly give people a chance if they don't have a master's, but maybe that's because I don't have one myself, and use my work experience to compensate for that, I guess. After I graduated, it was time to get my first job, and so I wrote by letter back then to virtually every single environmental consultancy or company with my CV. I decided I didn't want to work for my parents' environmental consultancy, even if they would actually have let me in. So I got very few replies from writing to everybody, a few thanks but no thanks, and I was getting a bit despondent. So one evening I was watching the Channel 4 News and saw the Director of Transport Studies at the University of Westminster interviewed about sustainable transport. I thought that sounded pretty interesting, so I took a chance and wrote to him asking if he might have any positions available. He wrote back, and I started as a researcher in London 3 months later. So having moved to London, I pretty quickly realised that life as an academic wasn't for me. And so after about 9 months, I really realised that it was business that I wanted to work in. And over the 18 years since then, I've mainly worked for environmental or sustainability consultancies. 4 of these in total. They've all been different sizes, from small boutique 15 people through to 13,500 people globally. I've also worked for EDF in-house, as Rhian mentioned, leading their sustainability reporting for 3 years, as well as an international charity. And I moved on each time I was looking for a new challenge or for something different, or that I realised that it was time to move on. And I've used a career coach during those times over the last 10, 12 years. And that's really helped me work out what it was that I really wanted to do and how to go about it. In terms of how I found those different jobs, those new jobs, after the success of writing to somebody I saw on a TV method, I've found jobs in 3 different ways. So I've been successful with 2 jobs in applying via the traditional job advert and formal interview. I've got 1 job through a recruitment consultancy or agency, and lots of other opportunities have emerged and discussions from that process. And then 2 jobs have been via my network of contacts that I've made along the way. One of these was working for the boutique consultancy whose directors were my consultants when I was their client at EDF Energy. So it does pay to develop a network and to keep in touch with people, in particular who you've got on well with and who you've enjoyed working with. I've also turned down some jobs I've been offered over the years. Sometimes the location or even the salary might not have been perfect, but it was mainly based on the feeling that the opportunity wasn't quite right for me at that time. And so trust your instincts. I've recently started my own business, Green Unlimited, as a freelance sustainability consultant, and I'm loving this new stage of my career. It means I have the flexibility and freedom to spend time with my young family whilst working on projects and clients that really interest me. I've been reflecting for this session about what the most important skills might be for being a consultant, so you can consider whether that might be the right career for you. And first of all, I think being well organised is essential to be most efficient and effective. This obviously isn't a unique skill to consultancy, but when you're working on multiple projects for multiple clients at the same time, it's pretty essential. Next is about really listening to your clients, your team, colleagues, and to any other stakeholders. Otherwise, you won't have happy clients or happy people. And thirdly, being one step ahead of where the client is and thinking on the go, which some might describe as winging it, but of course it's all backed up by years of knowledge and experience. The best part of being a consultant to me is working with a great team to deliver top-notch work to a really happy client. And working on projects that make a difference are the most satisfying, which comes back to my aim of working with business from the inside to help advance sustainability. I've been thinking also about what my biggest achievements have been in my career so far, and I've had some high-profile events like launching a report at the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos, went on to comment there, and another report launched in the UN General Assembly in New York. But I'd say that my biggest personal successes, and certainly my most satisfying moment, have been involving my team, such as helping them get promoted or even a fast-track promotion so that they get the recognition that they deserve. And that's one thing that I really love doing is working with a team of people to deliver. In terms of where I see the sustainability profession going, it's so diverse and there's no real description that can cover the whole field. And this means that there are so many opportunities, so you can carve your own niche, which is great. But it also means that it can be daunting to know where to start. And although the profession has been around for over 30 years, it's still evolving and becoming mainstream in many ways. And I see it becoming more professionalised via academic degree courses, qualifications and professional bodies, certainly as Katie has mentioned, but also the need to meet the challenge of sustainable development is an evolving task, so the profession needs to adapt and evolve to be able to achieve this. So the short answer is I don't have an answer, which is probably a consultant's answer. And I'll finish now with a few top tips for growing your green career. Firstly, remember that your current job doesn't have to be the perfect or dream job. As long as you're learning and growing and hopefully enjoying it, use it as a stepping stone to the next job for your next step. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And that's something that I've had to work on over the years, be that from friends, family, close colleagues, a career coach or a mentor. And finally, have confidence in your beliefs, your passion for what you do, and use that as your guiding star throughout your career.
Thank you, Kate. That was fantastic. Really helpful. I know we've had a lot of questions coming into the question box here for all of our speakers so far. But folks, if you've got a question specifically for Kate, now's your chance, and we will do our best to answer at least one or two, and we will get back to you on the others. Julia, would you like to pick a question as it comes through?
Yeah, sure. We had actually lots of questions, and I can see one which says, what do you do if the specialized field you're interested in is in sparse in your country, and if those few companies available won't accept you because you're not qualified enough? Where do you start from there?
Oh, It's quite a tough one.
That's a really tough question. I think one way could be about building a network and trying to speak to the people that are working in the area that you're interested in. I always find that everybody's quite happy to talk about themselves, so inviting people to meet with you, to have a coffee, or even for half an hour, to find out more about them and their experience and how they might be running the team that you're interested in getting in, or tips that they can offer you to get into the field that you're interested in, and that they then can become part of your network, and there might be an opportunity that comes up, or you might be able to do some work experience or interning to get that might help you get there. And everybody that you meet, or you meet like that, then I definitely recommend asking them one other person that you can speak to. And then that's a good way to further grow your network and to expand your contacts.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Kate. There's some loads of questions here. One thread that I'm seeing at the moment is around juggling a good career with being a mother. And there's some questions around school pickup. Does anybody have children? Just this sense of flexibility. So I know that's for everybody, but Kate, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yes, I have two small children, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and in the last 6 years, I've had 2 years on maternity leave for each one. And I was working for DNV, who's a Norwegian company, and they were very flexible with coming back to work and decreasing my working hours to 4 days a week, and so I was quite lucky in that regard. There was a lot of travel, so there was sometimes that I had to be away, and so being a team with your partner, if you have one, that's been really essential for me. And ultimately, I've made the decision to launch as a freelancer, to have ultimate control over my work and what I do. So I think it's about the company that you work for and presenting a business case for why it's better. And I certainly find that everybody that's ever worked with me as being part-time, has been a working mum, has been far more efficient than somebody that's not necessarily had that time constraint and that pressure. So they've always been great to work with and to work for.
Thanks, Kate. I think I said. Go on, who's that?
Kate, I agree, definitely. I've got 2 young children myself. I actually work 4 days a week, kind of to fit around and keep the childcare costs to a minimum, really, was the main part of it. And I think you can make these roles work for yourself. It is hard. It's it's balancing and juggling all of the personal commitments in addition to work. And I think I put pressure on myself to be doing better at work, to kind of prove that the fact that because I'm only working 4 days, I can still do it. It's not an issue. As Kate mentioned, having a really strong, your husband or partner, if they can really help with that, it's really fantastic. So it makes you, the nights when you need to stay longer or travel away, you can do that. The companies I speak to, they're much more flexible these days in relation to, you can work different options around them. I mean, the one thing I've come across recently is a 9-day fortnight, a 10-day fortnight, where it's not quite 4 days a week, it's almost sort of 4.5 days a week. So I think have those conversations with companies. Don't be afraid to have those conversations, and you'd be amazed how accommodating and flexible companies can be nowadays.
Yeah, and I would add that actually this goes both ways for the dads as well. We've got one observation here. Does anyone ever ask a man how it is to combine work and family? This is from Karina. Good observation. I think she said, I think we must think beyond that question, and it's not about making it any different. It's all about the will, and I think that's true. It is about the will, and I'm always but I'm also inspired by men who also go in and ask those questions. How can I get the balance that I want to see to make my career thrive? So it's a question for both genders, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, Rhian, can I just say, it's Kate, my husband also works 4 days a week, so we do share it like that. So I do agree.
Share the juggle. Brilliant. Okay, I just want to I'm just going to add just a couple of things. A lot of the great tips and the strategies that I might have mentioned have been picked up by our fantastic speakers on this webinar, but I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things. I'm a coach who works with very much with change makers, with people who are very passionate about their career, and I enable them to maximize their impact as well as flourish, to really enjoy their careers and to create that balance that we all want to see. So just a couple of thoughts from me, and then we'll see if we've got time for another question. And there's a couple of things I just want to share with you before we close down the webinar. So a couple of things I just wanted to add in from my experience is this whole point around clarity being so important, but from the perspective of being so clear of what is important to you. You need to really understand what your purpose is, understand your why. And so many people might know that at the beginning, but might lose track a little bit, might sort of not spend that time just stopping and reflecting on where are they at and what's important to them now. So in order to do that, the things you need to think about are things like, what are your values? What are your strengths? What are your specific attributes? How do you want to use them? How do you want to be getting into flow? And, you know, making sure that what you want is really aligned to the core part of you. Now, this can change, absolutely. I am somebody who's had some shifts and changes in my career background, but it's about spending time tuning in. So that sort of takes me to my second point, which a couple of our speakers has mentioned, because they have talked about intuition and gut instinct. But I think we really do need to spend some time understanding what yes feels like, and not to be afraid to say no. So we need to sort of tune in, and we need to get out of what I call our headspace, which is where all the noise and our fear and our gremlins, all that self-doubt and negativity comes from. And we need to really sort of spend a bit of time tuning into, I guess, our heart space, thinking about, those values, what's important to us, and understanding what's the parameters for making a good decision for where we are right now in our careers. We need to often give ourselves permission to have ambition. And I saw in the question there was this thing about question about self-doubt and confidence. So we need to cultivate that. And I often talk about the 3 C's triangle, that being competence, confidence, and courage. Now they all need work. When we focus on our competency and get better at stuff, that has a direct impact on our confidence. We need to get clear on those things that we don't feel confident about and do some work on it, but also not to beat ourselves up about it, because actually a bit of low confidence is actually a good thing, because it just enables you, perhaps not to go into that egotistic, you can get a little bit of overconfident, but we certainly don't want to hold ourselves back. But we do need to do the inner work. I think that's the one thing as a coach I really see is those people who take the time to reflect and to pause and to do a bit of inner work and to understand what might be holding them back. Those are the people who are able to really progress their careers and to really ensure that they are maximizing their talents, but doing work that makes a difference and also sustains them in the long run as well. So I just want to share quickly, and then we'll see if we've got time for a quick final couple of questions. But to help you do some of this, I thought you might be interested to know that we are actually holding another webinar on the 28th of March. That webinar will be up on Eventbrite, and we'll be including that in an email that are coming out to you after this webinar. But that's called Your Green Career Audit. That's on the 28th of March. It's going to help you look at assessing exactly where are you right now in your career, and help you working out what you simply must have in your working life in order to enjoy a fulfilling and meaningful working life moving forward. So for those of you who had identified that you perhaps weren't clear on where you're going, this would be a fantastic opportunity for you to take that pause, take that time to reflect, and to join us for our next webinar on the 28th of March. Quite a few of our speakers, have mentioned networking, and absolutely, this is why one of the reasons why we're here is to give our Women in Sustainability, opportunities to connect both online in terms of our events here as in webinars, but if you're in the UK, also face-to-face. So we've got 4 events coming up in London, Bristol, Newcastle and Oxford. They're all up on Eventbrite, and the links will be included in the follow-up emails that are going to come to you after this event. For those of you who have not signed up to be on our mailing list, please do so. That means we can send you some notifications on future events, future webinars, which we will definitely be doing more of. That's us on Twitter. We're at SustWomen. And if anybody wants to follow up with me, that's an email you can get hold of me. So just quickly, it's the top of the hour, but is there any quick question, Julia, that anything that you've seen, you think, I think we need to answer that?
Well, I've seen quite a few questions coming through, but I think you answered the main topics, let's say, and lots of positive feedbacks and lots of thank you to all of you for the brilliant session we had. And I don't know if we want to close with a very final, let's say, tip from you, Rhian, on this one.
Okay, well, I just want to thank Maureen and Kate and Katie for joining us today. Your expertise was really, really welcome. I think my final tip has to be, I think, to just take responsibility for your career. Actually, I think when I was younger, I used to think that maybe my managers or my organization were looking out for me, and that they would enable that. If I just did a good job, everything would be okay. And what I've learned is actually that's not necessarily the case. Yes, there's some very good managers and leaders out there in our sector, but actually we need to take responsibility. So that would be my final tip, is to take responsibility for your career, and to, once you've worked out what's important to you, really believe that it is within your gift to create a very thriving and impactful career for yourselves. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Keep in touch with us so we can share more things that are going on. And thank you for your time. And we really hope that you found this a useful time to spend thinking about how to grow your green career. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. And as said at the beginning, you will receive an email tomorrow with the link to the recorded session and our contact details should you need to contact us. And I wish you a wonderful rest of your day, and thanks again for joining us today.